See you.
Well, you're in the room. You should be able to see me. Hello, God bless and welcome. I'm Kevin Haggerty. You're watching the Godlogic Project, where we discuss maintaining a Christian worldview in a post-Christian America, how that looks like in everyday life, how we can apply that in everyday life. And we kind of put together an emergency show. I'm getting a lot of calls here during the lockdown, during the coronavirus lockdown. Getting a lot of calls, a lot of text messages about people going back out, addicts, alcoholics going back out, overdose and committing suicide. I've had an overdose hit my family this week, my son's mother. So it's just was on my heart this morning to do an emergency broadcast, in essence, of the Godlogic Project. And I got a couple of local recovery professionals who are nice enough to come in on short notice, and we're going to talk to them tonight about the importance of or the dangers of isolating when you're in recovery. So addicts and isolation, as you're about to find out, don't go together very well. So we're going to talk about that, but first we're going to play the intro music. Hello, God bless and welcome. I'm Kevin Haggerty, and this is the Godlogic Project.
Shut up, Kevin.
That's right. I'm Kevin. I'm Kevin Haggerty, and that's Mike Houston telling me to shut up like he does every week. I couldn't help but notice I was the only one dancing for the intro music. So, you got to get hip. I mean, it's hip to be square.
We'll remember for next time.
So I have in the studio a couple of professionals in the recovery community here in Tampa Bay. We're going to talk about kind of the dangers and the perils of an alcoholic or an addict being alone, right? Being in isolation or being in lockdown. And we're going to go through some of our personal experiences in the last couple of months, what we're seeing in both in social media and unfortunately in real life of folks that are just not handling isolation very well, and especially early in recovery. And then we're not going to leave you there. We're going to come up with some solutions for you. So I want you to stay tuned. But first I'm going to go around the room, and I'm going to let my guests introduce themselves. Lauren, what's your name?
I'm Lauren Herman.
Lauren, welcome, and you are with?
I'm with Recovery Epicenter Foundation.
Recovery Epicenter Foundation. That is quite a coincidence because my other guest, Will.
Yes, sir.
Recovery Epicenter Foundation, am I right?
Yes, sir, with Recovery Epicenter Foundation.
So you guys are the epicenter of recovery in Tampa Bay.
That's correct.
We hope to be is a good recovery community organization that helps individuals as much as we possibly can throughout this pandemic, as well as just in everyday life, accomplishing overcoming regular obstacles to early recovery.
So what do you guys do 9 to 5? What do you do at Recovery Epicenter that to serve the recovery community?
So primarily we're working on Narcan distribution as well as recovery coaching. So what we've recently done actually is gotten attached to Faces and Voices Recovery Capital Assessment, and we are in the process of helping people in early recovery develop their own recovery capital through this assessment.
Really? What is recovery capital?
So recovery capital is actually a really cool thing. A lot of the times in the professional world, we look at it from an acute care model. And that acute care model is this person in danger of withdrawal? Is his body and mind sound? Is he going to immediately return to active drug and alcohol use? And so the recovery capital piece of it is all the other factors that go into a person's life that contribute to whether they stay sober or not. Developing a community, developing a spiritual experience, developing emotional ties, as well as jobs, housing, food, basic necessities.
So you help lead people through the process, and it is quite a process to go from basically from jails, institution, and near death, the streets, to getting your life back and getting all the things that just average people have in their lives.
Yes, sir.
And so, Lauren, then what do you do for Recovery Epicenter?
I'm basically the Narcan distribution. Recently, we've paired up with a few different ministries. One of them is they distribute food to the homeless, so they're going to include Narcan into that. So
that's excellent. So and we're going to talk Narcan tonight because I've done a Narcan episode, and I'll put a card. Wait, where am I? I'll put a card right here where you can click on the Narcan episode that we already did. So we're going to talk solutions to the isolation, right? So we're going to focus particularly on opiates. When we're talking Narcan, we're talking opiate addiction, which is just ravaging certainly West Pasco County right now, and it's not limited. I mean, there is no there's nowhere where I've heard, in my experience, a good OxyContin story. So for me, it's never ended well, and I've had surgeries and haven't taken them just because I know so many guys that they were contractors making $200,000 or $300,000 a year. Then I see him in front of 7-Eleven looking for quarters for cigarettes. You know, same guy that used to pay me big money to be his plumber, now lost everything, and it all around back surgery or some kind of injury that is common in construction, right? So we all suffer those injuries.
And it's getting even more dangerous out there with the fentanyl explosion because they seem to be including that in everything.
Yeah.
Meth, cocaine, opiates. They're even making their own pills out there right now. And a report that has recently come out from the Pasco Sheriff's Office indicates that while opiates still do command the largest number of overdoses, cocaine and meth, included with fentanyl in it, are also major contributors to this epidemic. So while people are staying at home and isolating from one another, they've all been fed this idea of social distancing, when really what we need to be doing is practicing safe, healthy physical distancing, as opposed to isolating from the people who are a part of our community. So right now, people in early recovery or thinking about getting sober or getting healthy, they don't know where to go or where to turn. I mean, we were talking before the show, and it's a very difficult time for somebody in early recovery who isn't stabilized to maintain and not return to an active way of life that in this day and age is actively killing them.
Well, here's the problem, I think, it's been my experience with alcoholics. I'm an alcoholic mainly, so you get a lot of what I'm going to talk about comes from that angle. So there wasn't a ton of pills to take when I was a kid, Quaaludes, but they were like this big, so nobody took them, except for Led Zeppelin. Alcoholics tend to do everything backwards. Addicts tend to do everything backwards. So when we feel lonely, we isolate, right? When we feel depressed, the first thing we do is drink a depressant. So it is very dangerous. You talk about the physical distancing, which we're doing in the studio right now, by the way. We've set it up to do that here in the studio tonight. But it's the emotional distancing that's killing these guys. It's the social distancing and the implications of that are very dangerous. Now, I had a lady, I'll kind of give you a single scenario of what I've gone through in the last few weeks or the last couple months with the addiction, with the lockdown. Before the lockdown, I had a lady, her nephew or cousin or something like that, overdosed, and they got him, and he lived through it, and she wanted to know if I could help him, and ultimately I tried to get him into treatment, and the family decided to do it themselves. The upside is he was doing well. Right, he was going to the gym, he's going to meetings, he's driving, picking up people for meetings and doing all the right things, and then the quarantine comes. Now he's early in recovery, there's no gym, there's no meetings anymore, there's no coffee after the meetings, and he's now locked up in the house, and he OD'd and passed away in his 30s.
I'm so sorry to hear that. Wow.
So
it's a very common story, unfortunately.
Yeah, and it's something that I'm hearing way too much of. So if you follow me on Facebook, seeing 2 or 3 of these every day, which is what made me think when we talked this morning to kind of do this show. So it's a whole different ball game, I think, when you're dealing with opiates. So and a lot of the complaints I've been hearing is why is a liquor store an essential service? But if you're an alcoholic, they need that alcohol or they will die, right? So you're, believe it or not, keeping people alive in this scenario by having that liquor store open. It's crazy and counterintuitive as that is, but that's legal, right? Then you go to the life of an addict where the alcohol isn't enough and they need the opiates, and you're going to get it wherever you're going to do what you need to do to get it, and you're going to get it wherever you can get it. And fentanyl is a big problem. So I had a family member get out of jail 3 weeks ago, and last Monday, OD'd, passed away. And so it's hard enough to recover from addiction, but add isolation into this equation, and it's brutal. So if these people aren't already in a sober living facility where they're surrounded by like-minded people who are in recovery that can push and pull each other through the recovery process, it's very, very difficult to get through this process on your own. I certainly couldn't have done it way back in the day by myself. I needed, in fact, then adults in my life to lead me through and guide me through this process, and they literally babysat me for the first 60 days.
We all need that.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. None of us get sober alone.
And it's a matter of accountability. It's a matter of community. It's a matter of developing some form of self-worth again, right? So you socially, you come into recovery feeling kind of worthless. I mean, I don't know anybody that doesn't, right? You don't get to the rooms on a winning streak, right? You get there under the worst possible conditions. So what are you hearing, Lauren? You're more plugged into the community even than I am. What are you hearing? What are you hearing about folks, how they're handling this, especially early in recovery?
Well, I know that for me personally, that feeling of connectedness was something that I yearned for in my active addiction. So I know that to be true for others as well. And they're definitely feeling lonely. A lot of them are out of work because they're servers. And so they have the financial stress on top of it. So, yeah, they're really struggling.
So it literally, if whatever momentum they had, or whatever forward momentum they had even a couple of months ago is gone now. And it is, like I said, if they're in a sober living facility with 10 or 12 other people early in recovery, they got a little bit of a chance that, they get some teamwork there. But if you can't go to a 12-step meeting, and you can do it online, and I've been doing it online, but I can tell you it's not the same thing. And the
absolutely not the same thing.
The accountability online is not like the accountability when we're having coffee afterwards, and you're like, what's going on with you? You're not yourself. It's very hard to tell that online.
Computer screen.
Yeah, and I could literally be taking myself. I could literally turn my camera off, take a swig of a bottle, and turn my camera back on, and the people wouldn't know it, right? So it is a very, very different experience, especially for people that are new. So you get a few years under your belt, and you've got tools, and you've got people you call, and you're used to calling them, right? So in the beginning, it's very hard to make that phone call and
feels like it's 1,000 pounds, that phone.
Right, and talk about your feelings and things like that. But that's what we need to do. So what old timers tell newcomers to do are the same things the old timers are doing to be old timers, right?
Yeah.
So but that is a process, and that's not something you just it's not a light that comes on all of a sudden. It takes personal discipline in the beginning, and maybe later it becomes spiritual muscle memory, but very difficult stuff. So tell me, Will, you run Recovery Epicenter, and we're going to show the Recovery Epicenter website here in a minute, but do you guys follow this on social media? Because I had only begun to follow this on social media because of the lockdown, right? When everybody started putting up fresh pages of local recovery groups, and I'm seeing a lot of people on social media that are they're either out or they're ready to go out.
Well, and it's a natural byproduct, unfortunately, of this whole thing, because people who are already stabilized in their recovery are kind of circling the wagons through this point. They have their fellowship, they have their community, and they're just surviving continually. But what is great about recovery in normal times is that reaching out, one addict, one alcoholic, trying to help the next.
Yeah.
And that's what's missing right now.
Yeah.
So all of those people who we otherwise would have been able to see, would have been able to work with, would have been able to help, are now falling away because they hadn't gotten to that point of stabilization yet when this whole thing went down. And so the question becomes, in this age of social distancing, how do we maintain community?
Yeah.
How do we reach these individuals who are feeling alone, feeling like nobody knows what they're going through, what they're feeling, what they're thinking, what they're struggling with? How do we help them without propagating and continuing this virus that is killing people?
Yeah.
So it's funny, we have this disease of addiction that we all live with and that we've all stabilized from at this moment, which is really excellent. And yet, for us to continue to maintain that stabilization, we have to give it away.
Yeah. How do we do that now? You know? And I do, if you guys watch the Godlogic Project, and I'm sure everybody out there in TV land watches the Godlogic Project every week, about a third of my episodes are on recovery and the recovery community. But that is, it's nice to talk or to hear someone who lives the shared experience of recovery, but it's not the same as being together in that recovery process, right? The same with the meetings. I've been going to some online meetings, recovery meetings, and besides the fact that nobody can use the Zoom app, anybody over 30 can't use the Zoom app. Yeah. I couldn't either unless I was using it for the podcast the last year. But there is a disconnect, and there is an emotional disconnect from that, right? So you're not getting phone numbers, you're not shaking hands, you're not having coffee afterwards, you're not picking someone up and dropping them off and having that meeting in the car on the way, right?
Right.
Where people will truly open up at that point. So what are some solutions do you think, as much as we can do with the electronic stuff, Lauren, what are some of the solutions for this season now, right? So there's not much we can do yet, right? Now, maybe a month from now, this is less of an issue, and we're back to the normal recovery process, which is not fun to begin with. What are some tools, since you're young and hip, right? What are some tools that we can use to stay plugged in and keep some kind of emotional connection with the people around us? I mean, is social media enough? It doesn't seem real to me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it absolutely does make sense. What we need is for the quote unquote old timers to step out and reach out their hand. Obviously, not physically, but one of the things that we have come up with is with Recovery Epicenter is that people in recovery sharing their story. So if there's anybody out there that has a year or more sober, even less than a year, if they'd like to share their story, we'd be happy to post it onto our social media so we can reach more people.
And I'm going to show your website, but it just reminded me I got an email and then I never did the video, so I'm embarrassed now. I should have done that this morning when I knew you were coming. But I got an email invitation to do that and I never did. So that's about as much as you can expect from me, folks. While blessed with stunning good looks, I'm not terribly bright. I'd rather look like this, the truth is. You get a lot further like this than you would like being smart, like reading and writing, All right, I'll stop. All right, so let's do this. Let's show the Recovery Epicenter website. I'm going to drop that on the screen now. And so tell me what I'm looking at here, Will. This is a way they can reach out to you to get an idea of the services you offer. They can contact you also on Facebook from here.
Yes, sir. So from here, you can see our mission, our vision, what we've been up to since 2014 when we started, 2015 when we became a 501c3, and 2016 when we became an accredited, we're working on CAPRIS accreditation right now, but an ARCO member in 2016. And so throughout those years, we have had numerous different evolutions to this process. And as we have grown, we have included more and more ways in which we can improve and help our community. Over the last 3 years, we've trained over 50 recovery coaches between Hillsborough, Pinellas, and Pasco County. We also, in the last 2 years, have distributed well over 2,500 doses of Narcan to our community. And it has been an absolute amazing experience to have people give us a call and say, hey, your Narcan saved our life.
Yeah.
And from there to be able to connect them with people who could help them navigate early recovery through the recovery coaches and get them involved in the community. Overall, though, our website is much more of a informational platform of what are best practices, what are going on, what resources can they access, because we're not able to necessarily do detox. We're not able to necessarily do counseling. We are just a peer-to-peer support network.
Right.
And by connecting them to those services, they can hopefully begin to grow in their recovery, and we're there to help them along that process.
So what's interesting is that you train recovery coaches, basically. So, and you spoke a little bit about, and this is something that I don't do, and traditionally you don't chase people, right? But you answer the phone when they call, right? So I would say the harvest is plenty and the workers are few, so I can't be chasing people. I get phone calls all the time. Can you call my nephew in Indiana? Can you call my cousin in Massachusetts? you can give them my cell phone number and let them call me. He won't do that.
Yeah.
Then I'm busy. I mean,
you don't ambulance chase.
Yeah, it doesn't work that way. But now, maybe in this season, Lauren touched on a little bit. Maybe it's time for old timers who are used to their traditional approach to 12-step work to say, hey, I mean, I should be knocking on some electronic doors, right? Hitting people up on Facebook or by text message just to check in on them. And then it dawns on me, we got 50 trained professionals that maybe could be quite an army for providing that, right?
I would encourage every single person that we have trained who is watching this, as well as anyone in the recovery community, to start making a minimum of 5 to 10 calls every single day to people that you normally would have regularly seen that you aren't seeing right now. We have to stick together. And if we choose to just circle the wagons, stick around what we already know, as opposed to continuing to check in on people, don't get me wrong, recovery will survive. I mean, that's really the beautiful thing about this way of life. You're in recovery, Lauren's in recovery, I'm in recovery. So long as we continue to live by this way of life and do what we need to do, we can be there to help somebody else out in the future.
Yeah.
There's so many hundreds of people out there right now who are suffering, and all they need is someone to say, you know what, man, I know exactly what you were going through. I've been there myself, and here's how I got out of that.
Yeah.
They just need that light at the end of the tunnel.
So here's what I'm going to do then, and we have no show notes. We talked about before the show. I usually have show notes. We don't have that today because we're just kind of round tabling it here. This was a last minute setup we did. I'm going to put the Recovery Epicenter Foundation website up again, and that is recoveryepicenterfoundation.org. And it dawns on me that most of the text messages that I'm getting are coming from family members of addicts. They may be unaware, if they don't live with that addict, what that person is going through being so isolated. It may be an opportunity for them to get that information, Recovery Epicenter, get it out to people like me, get it to the Godlogic Project, and we can do some of the footwork in this season. We can do some of the footwork for you. So
let's do it together, absolutely. And family members out there who have children in recovery, you're in recovery too. So that ability to tell others about your own personal experience of how you were there to support your child and or provide a good, solid boundary so that they had the opportunity to learn for themselves, that experience is just as valuable to these parents that are out there suffering as much as an addict and alcoholic reaching out to another addict and alcoholic. So, I mean, please, if you are someone who feels like your child is stabilized, get with us and let's start communicating with family members who are suffering.
And I just spoke at a 30th anniversary of Al-Anon type of setup, and I was the kind of 12-step speaker between two Al-Anon speakers, and it was like being dropped behind enemy lines. By the way, it was like going to a Yankee game at Fenway Park. So they were all like, but there are. I say it all the time, but the 12-step programs have saved more lives than penicillin in this world. If you consider the families, my son, right, my kids, my mother and father, they had to deal with me, right, my brothers and sisters. Anybody that ever made the mistake of employing me had to deal with having me in their lives, you know. So the amount of lives that are affected by one person and making through the recovery process is exponential, right? So it's not just us. It's not just the millions of people in recovery, but the billions of people that had somebody that wasn't in recovery that is in recovery now, and maybe millions of people who lost somebody that never made it through the process. And those are the phone calls I'm getting. While we're on the subject, and I do this every show, if there's anything I can do for you guys personally, either spiritually or relative to recovery for you or a family member, message me at godlogicproject.com. I do this all the time. It's how I spend my time for the most part. I'm a pastor, so I don't have much to do. I only work on Sunday. So if you need me for anything, message me, godlogicproject.com. If you're watching this and you like the content, please subscribe, ring the alert bell. If you see our stuff on social media, trying to raise awareness for this project as much as possible. You see our stuff on social media, please share it. If you comment, I will go through the comments at the end of the show, and I'll respond to every comment on there. But if there's anything I can do for you guys, it's really the point of the Godlogic Project is to be here for you guys. So godlogicproject.com, you can message me and I'll get right back to you. And if I could be of service, I certainly will. And that goes for for a lot of people in the recovery community now. Lauren, we have in this area, we have a pretty dynamic recovery community, right? So you and I know a lot of the same people, right?
Right.
So we've turned in a lot of the same circles. So there are people available, and there are people, we know the same people, and I know they're willing to help.
Right.
So what can we do, you think, to we can technically hold meetings so long as we're outdoors and 6 feet apart or something like that. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So are some of the clubhouses doing that? Do you guys know?
Yes.
So if they reach out to Recovery Epicenter, we can put them 6 feet away from another addict or alcoholic with a phone call. So
Absolutely.
it is doable, right? So if there's something we can do to help you guys through that process. Now, did you bring a sample? Look, it's even got your sticker on the back. We're going to show you guys now what we've been talking about, and what you may not have understood what we were talking about. Is we're talking about Narcan. So Narcan this is a nasal spray it's an opiate blocker that will bring somebody back who is overdosed from opiates, basically, right? So
life-saving medication.
Yeah. And some of the comments I got today, and the woman that her son OD'd now the second time, her Narcan saved his life the first time, and CPR did it this time, and he's awake but in rough shape. Go through the process of what Narcan is and how it works, and people have to understand that you don't need a prescription for this stuff, and it's not that people who are addicted to opiates are going to get, they don't need to have Narcan, but people in their lives need to have Narcan. I keep it in the studio. I keep it in the car glove compartment. You never know, especially in the circles we turn in, but kind of explain the Narcan process, what it is. I know this is short notice, and then how it's applied.
So Narcan completely reverses the effects of opioids. So basically what it does is it completely rips the opioids off of the opioid receptors. So basically it's a nasal spray, and it's very simple. You just put it right up their nose. You should also call 911.
Right.
And follow their instructions. Sometimes the person needs a second dose, and there is a second dose in this box.
And you cannot give too much Narcan. And part of the caveat is in 30 or 40 minutes, the Narcan is going to wear off, and they could then fall back into the original overdose state.
Which is why you need to call 911.
Yeah, you need to get 911 out there right away, and so you give them Narcan. You do a sternum rub, try to wake them up, make them uncomfortable for that moment that they come to consciousness again. You kind of prod them back into consciousness, and you give it to them. If it doesn't work, give it to them again. We need to get these people breathing, and
start CPR, call 911, get that process going, and sometimes even if they're just sleeping and you're worried about them, it isn't going to hurt them.
Yeah.
Just give them Narcan. And the best part of it is Recovery Epicenter has it for free.
Yeah.
And we are happy to hand it out to anyone who's asking for it. Because like you were talking about, Kevin, like we can't ambulance chase. We would love to be able to get this in hands of every single person who wants it. But all they have to do is reach out and say, hey, man, I need some Narcan, and I promise you we'll get it to you.
And if you have a family member or a friend or a neighbor, or you run a church or you run a recovery program where if you're handing out food, if you're likely to come in contact with people, and I live in Holiday, so I come in contact with people struggling with opiate addiction all the time.
Yes, sir.
This is something you need to have that could save a life, and I statistically, like 70% of the times that that Narcan saves a life, it is administered by non-professionals. So only 30% of the time is it EMT or a doctor giving it, but 70% of the time it's people like you and I.
Absolutely. Right. I mean, the entire thing is that you, as a family member, as a friend, as a brother, as an employee, as an employer, this is a life-saving medication. The only thing that Narcan enables is breathing.
Yeah.
A person cannot get better if they die from this thing.
Right. If they stop breathing, it's game over.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And so they can reach out. I'm going to put your website up again, but they can reach out to Recovery Epicenter, and we've already been talking about it. I've been on some conference calls where we're trying to strategically get this stuff out in mass, right? So there are literally thousands of doses available for free. You don't need a prescription, And if you are an addict, or if there's more likely an addict in your life, this is something you're going to want to have available all the time.
And what's so great about the state of Florida through DCF is they have made it available through multiple organizations.
Yeah.
And that is so amazing. So there is a plethora of this life-saving medication available that all it takes is, like Lauren was saying, just one nozzle, I don't know how to say the word.
One squirt.
Squirt, yeah. Like it's just, yep. And then, all right, call 911. Start chest compressions, follow their instructions. If you need to do another one, do another one. If you need to do 4, do 4. I mean, there is no amount of Narcan that is too much.
And one of the great things about Pasco County, and I'm not one to say great things about Pasco County sheriffs, but they all have Narcan now in the car with them,
Yep.
right? So, and where I live in West Pasco, this is there's a lot of cops in this area because of the need for cops in this area. There's a lot of deputies. So you got to get that 911 call done, because if the ambulance doesn't get there, the deputy with the Narcan will be there. And by the way, Good Samaritan laws apply. So if you're worried about getting in trouble because you called the sheriff, you have legal protection that can't happen, which is another big plus.
And I'd love to give a huge shout out to Captain Tony Rhodes. She has been a huge supporter of the recovery movement in the Pasco area. I grew up believing that the cops were out to get me, and that's because I was ripping and running.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just part of the lifestyles. You don't want to get caught by the cops. But what's so amazing, not only about being on the other side of that in recovery now, is that the police are there to help us. I know that might sound weird if you're still out there using, but they truly are. And the sheriff here in Pasco, their department is absolutely amazing. Captain Jenkins, Captain Roach, I mean, these people are dedicated to saving lives when, I mean, their mandate is just to protect against crime.
Yeah.
And instead, they're devoting their time and their effort to not only make sure that people are surviving this, but are having better opportunities. So I'm incredibly grateful for everything that they're doing.
And as far as our local politicians go, or local businesses, they need to understand, and I've said this on several episodes, but not only are we taking away a community liability by helping these folks through the recovery process, but we're building assets. So the same guy that was robbing your store a year ago could be your best employee next year.
Absolutely.
And alcoholics and drug addicts tend to be very smart, very hardworking, excellent salesmen, right?
What recovery capital assessments actually have taught us is that 70% of people in recovery are more likely to volunteer than somebody who's not.
Yeah, yeah.
So that person who was in jail, that person who was stealing and, taking your stuff to the pawn shop and messing up families and all the damage that we can create, now they're in recovery. They've become the person who is the most asset to your community, helping out on the neighborhood watch, in the PTA meetings, being involved. Like, I like to joke around with newcomers, and I use the Fight Club line. It's like, hey, man, we're everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, we're your janitors, we're your politicians, we're your lawyers, we're your doctors. We're just not drinking and drugging anymore.
I've literally been at a local clubhouse sitting and talking to a lawyer who pulled up in a Lincoln Navigator and a homeless dude, right? And we're all eating the same McDonald's, drinking the same coffee. There's no real difference between the plumber, the lawyer, and the homeless dude. At that moment, we are truly.
Addiction does not discriminate.
No, and it's not a respecter of persons. So it is. It's pretty scary that there is still such a stigma attached to it. And I understand the principle of anonymity, but I've never really kept it a secret of my background. And I've had plumbing customers, who've called me years later and said, you quit drinking. I said, yeah. You still go to those meetings? Yeah. Could you pick me up for one? Yeah. This is a grown man that remembered his plumber who remodeled his bathroom, didn't drink, and that he went to meetings. I must have blown my anonymity. How else would he know it? And it made an impact on that guy's life and that family, right?
But that's amazing. I mean, the only stories that they ever get of people like us are the Charlie Sheens or the mayors and all this, and don't get me wrong, it's so cool to see them get better as well. But the reality is we've been taught through a 12-step model that it's important for us to keep this a secret, that somehow it's shameful. And it's not, all right? Relapse does not have to be a part of your story. It does happen if we haven't figured out what we need to do. And so that's why we need to have the appropriate safety measures in place and help people as they slip. if they slip. But most importantly, we need to celebrate the fact that there are millions of people, 3 sitting in this room right here, practicing physical safe distancing, talking hopefully to an audience in recovery themselves and others who want to be in recovery. Yeah. And this way of life and this what we get to do isn't something that needs to be anonymous.
Yeah.
Now, the 12 steps have a tradition for anonymity, and that's incredibly important for that organization so that organization can continue to do the good work that it does. But personal anonymity, man, I just have never agreed with that idea. And I'm not protecting anyone by saying, nope, can't talk about that.
Yeah.
Like that doesn't help anybody.
Well, as a pastor, I can tell you that they're very uncomfortable with, and I understand not being a Christian-focused program, even though we say the Lord's Prayer when it's over. I'm not going to say anything. But I've had people from the recovery community not want to come on the Godlogic Project because it's Godlogic Project, because it is, while it's a show about recovery, it mentions God, and they are so conditioned to think that will drive people out, and it might, but our founders were smart enough to put the God steps first, right? I can, he can, I'm going to let him. So they knew, they weren't ashamed of it. In fact, it wasn't until the second edition that those references to Jesus were taken out of the big book, by the way. Yep. I understand that we want to be as attractive. We want to get people first back from the gates of insanity and death before we really get deep into any kind of spiritual journey. But the idea that they two things are mutually exclusive is very dangerous, and it's a human condition. It wasn't the way it was set up, but it's the way we've kind of set it up in the last 30, 40 years.
Well, and I think you made an incredibly important point there. I mean, the people that founded the 12 steps and provided finally a solution to those of us who have an addiction, finally, in the first time in human history, they were Judeo-Christian, Caucasian gentlemen, all right, in the northeast and northwest of America.
Yeah.
Okay, that's our background. What we've expanded from there is acceptance of every single pathway to God.
All over the world, too.
All over
Every
the world.
culture in the world has 12-step recovery.
I love to tell people, if you struggle with the whole idea of a power greater than yourself, remember, we treated drugs and alcohol like a power greater than ourselves. We worshipped that stuff. It made us feel exactly the way we wanted to feel when we wanted to feel it. And now we have an opportunity to learn how to have a personal connection with a power greater than ourselves of our own understanding, whatever that may be. So every single pathway to God, whether it's through Jesus Christ or another,
any of them,
allows us to stay sober because we are replacing that God-sized hole that drugs and alcohol were filling with an actual spiritual experience that will save our life. Now, to get there, we have to overcome a whole bunch of real-world situations.
Yeah.
What am I going to eat today? How am I going to have a roof over my head? Where am I going to get employed when I'm a felon?
Yeah.
Like all of these actual real problems that then just make people not want to be a part of potentially the like you were saying, the Godlogic Project, because what has God done for me?
Yeah.
And then if we look around and it's God has done everything for us.
And it seems to me that people with 20 and 30 years of recovery, very comfortable talking about their relationship with their higher power. And it is, the important thing is it doesn't have to be, you don't have to believe what I believe, but believe that I believe, right? Yes, and there's a reason, a reason people get this far, right? And if you understand your higher power's will for you, you have an equal power, right? So I don't need a drunk Irish plumber to help me through life, because that guy got me in a lot of trouble. I need something to guide me through this process that is perfect and above me, right? So it just seems to me that we've created some certain divides that never had to be there, and it goes along with the denial of our family members are not addicts, right? I just had a conversation with somebody, and what they described to me sounds like addict behavior, and weight loss, neurotic, money missing, but they swear it's just weed, and I'm thinking, it's hard to smoke $3,000 worth of weed, right?
Oh, yeah.
So and I've tried. I know it's hard.
It's actually what Recovery Epicenter is most encouraged about. We've been in part of Fed Up rallies and Nope vigils and other pieces for advocacy, but the reality is there is a stigma in this world against asking for help.
Yeah.
All right, we're American. All right, we should be able to pull ourselves up by our bootstrap, and it kind of goes back into why, when we're in isolation, we're seeing that mentality fail. We're seeing that idea that we can just be okay by ourselves, taking care of our own issues, and we're seeing it fail, and it's costing human lives.
Yep.
So what we get an opportunity to do through Recovery Epicenter is to not only let people know that we do recover, and it is amazing, but that you can do it too.
Yeah.
And all it takes is all of us together being a part of it.
And it is not just that we recover, that we stay, and we talked about it before the show. I didn't just stay miserable, right? I didn't just quit and then do nothing with my life. So after I had a year, I went to college.
Yep.
Somebody like me going to college is a big deal. I dropped out of high school.
Congratulations.
I used to do stand-up. I said, I'm going to go do stand-up comedy in the clubs, sober, which is crazy. Who does that sober? I did it for years sober, you know.
I'm sure it brought you some really good jokes, though.
Yeah.
Talking
Well,
about
the
sober plumber.
now that I'm a pastor, I can't tell most of the jokes I used to tell. So I'm going to read some of the comments here on the YouTube channel. A lot of people are watching. Tricon Combat Fitness talks about the experience that he went through as a combat veteran. Is the same. What we're describing for addicts and alcoholics is very much what veterans are going through when they're coming back from active duty in war zones. So they've been deployed in war zones, and then to get back to civilian life is very tough. And I just so happened I took a call from a text message from somebody, a 20-year-old married, a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old killed himself because and this family member said he could not adjust to life outside of the military.
Oh man!
And he was in his 20s, so that's very, very.
We got to support our veterans better.
And it is the kind of a foxhole camaraderie that you see in the military is what you see in recovery, and you don't really see it many other places. Maybe first responders, the military, people in recovery.
Those are our brothers and sisters in arms.
Yeah.
We're trying to save each other's life.
You didn't see it in plumbing. We were competing with each other. Chaos God says he's in a sober living facility. He's lucky for that. He's surrounded by people in recovery, and that's what we talked about a little bit earlier. But so many people out there don't have that luxury. They're completely alone in recovery, and not everyone has the internet or even makes Zoom meetings, which is true. And it's hard for addicts or alcoholics to get outside of their comfort zone, so it's hard for us to do different things. And I certainly, even decades into my recovery, this quarantine screwed up my schedule, right? I am a creature of habit. I like to know I'm preaching on Wednesdays, I'm preaching on Thursday, I'm teaching on Friday. You know, I like my schedule regular, right? So this changed everything. All my outside speaking engagements gone. My son home from school. I thought about dropping him off at the parking lot and just with his laptop let him do his schoolwork there. So it's
right there with you.
It's very difficult for us as social creatures, particularly people in recovery are very social creatures, for us to be like that, cut off from our social supports, which is very dangerous. Somebody named Casey Penn, I'm not sure who that is. She says, "Hi, Dad and Lauren."
Hi, Casey.
And she also says, "Prayers and Narcan." And then somebody's made one of us made an impact on Casey's life. I'm assuming me, because she grew up around meetings. She says, and now she's in the program herself, which is awesome.
Hey, congratulations.
Chaos God says, "Recover out loud." I happen to have a shirt that says that.
Yeah.
And then some punk named Adam Robertson. "By the grace of God, I have choices today." Right on, brother. That's my son-in-law. He's not a punk. He's an awesome guy.
He's a good man. Good man.
Set aside the pride. This is Chaos God. Set aside the pride and ask for help. And that's the most important thing. So when I first, and you guys don't know this about me, maybe you know a little bit more about me, but I went to meetings for 5, 6, 7 years. I told jokes. I got there late. I left early. I set up for the parties and events. Then I wouldn't go to the party and event. I wasn't going to hug. I wasn't going to pray. I wasn't going to read the books. I wasn't going to tell anybody about my feelings. I was going to quit drinking and toughen up a little bit. 17 and a half years into my recovery, I'm going to kill myself with that strategy, right? Yeah. So those first 3 steps, and the importance of all the steps is that those first 3 steps could keep you sober the rest of your life. may not keep you from killing yourself 5 years from now. So it is important that we go through this process and have the accountability of our social networks and these types of things. When I was going to kill myself 14 years ago, probably shouldn't say this on the air, I didn't have a friend in the world. I had nobody to call. I had employees and customers. Every relationship I had was about money. It was about remodeling and construction and who am I going to sub out to, whom is going to sub out to me. All of my friends were, every relationship I had was based on money. And that almost includes my now ex-wife and my kids, who I would buy stuff for so they would leave me alone mostly, you know. So it is for us, for people like us, it's not just misery, right? It doesn't have to be just misery. The last 14 years of my life have been absolutely amazing, and the friends I've made. You saw that we had a little parade of joy from our 11-year-old who lost his mom last week, and there must have been 250 or 300 people there.
Yeah,
motorcycle clubs, and it was amazing.
It was amazing.
And a lot of people that I haven't seen that Lauren knows, I haven't seen it for 10 years, you know, and still, like we didn't miss a day, you know. Yeah. So it is, I can't explain the relationship you have with people in recovery. I just can't explain it. And you guys know what I mean, but it's hard to explain to people that don't know what we mean. You know?
Because we confuse the people that we were ripping and running with and really using the same way that we were using drugs and alcohol with actual friendships.
Yeah.
Because anything besides surface level is incredibly terrifying to someone who is using a substance.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be terrifying. And the only way that we find out that it's not terrifying is like that guy who commented. Let go of your pride. Ask for help. Call, man.
Yeah.
Promise you it's going to get better.
And the truth is, if you're close enough to help me, you're close enough to hurt me.
Yeah.
And people like us, people with my background, I can't speak for you guys, but my background ain't great, right? So people like me, I was a hologram most of my life of Kevin, right?
We have severe trust issues because we aren't very trusting.
Yeah. So I would always, with my wit and my insults and my sarcasm, keep everybody uncomfortable around me till I can get out of there. I literally, by the way, can speak to a group of 200 or 300 people perfectly comfortably. When it's over, I want to go. I want to get out of there. It's still hard for me to one-on-one with people, but I can one-on 300 every day. I'm not uncomfortable that way. So it is getting out of your comfort zone. One of the things that a guy told me a long time ago at a local clubhouse was he didn't say I had to do it, but he said his sponsor made him say hello to everybody before the meeting.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, no. and so I started doing it. And you know, it's part of my job now. I'm a pastor, and I in the beginning had to force myself to go around this church and say hello to everybody before the service. And now they're not there. I miss them every Sunday, you know. So it knocking me out of that comfort zone is what really, I say it all the time, but this is the easiest version of Kevin I've ever had to be in my life, you know. And I don't have a lot of the material things I used to have, and I'm happier now, right? I know you guys, right? We get to sit down in a very cool podcast studio and talk about this stuff, and maybe make a difference for the rest of our lives, you know. And if you're young and you get clean and sober, think about how many lives you can affect. And I wasted that, but that doesn't mean everybody has to, you know. So it's really good that we can do this and have these conversations.
Thank you for allowing us to be here and hanging out with you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks for coming out on short notice. I was certain that when I asked Lauren, I was certain she would say no because she's shy like me. So so we'll say goodbye to folks. I'm going to show your website one more time. And really, guys, recoveryepicenter.foundation.org. It's a good place to start, and really, it's not just for addicts and alcoholics, but people that, even if you're just worried that there's an addict or alcoholic in your life, there's people to talk to, right? Godlogicproject.com. You can talk to me personally. I've been at this a long, long time now, and there's services available. The cool thing about the Godlogic Project is there are services available that are just uncoordinated in a sense, right? So we don't know what's available, what funding's available, what program's still running, what program's not still running. Running the Godlogic Project has put me in a position where I have people inside and outside now the state of Florida that are in the recovery community. So if there's something I can do to help you, I certainly will. And if I can't, I'd probably be able to find somebody that can, and not just for you, but family members as well. So don't be afraid to contact me at godlogicproject.com. And again, all I ask is that you subscribe, ring the alert bell, and be part of the conversation. I appreciate everybody that comments on here, and folks are shopping on Amazon. They're going to godlogicproject.com first, clicking on the Amazon logo, and shopping as normal. And Amazon sending 2-3%. So far, it hasn't been very much, but they're sending a little bit of money to help support the Godlogic Project.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's an extra click, and it doesn't cost you a thing. So I want to thank you guys for supporting the Godlogic Project, for watching these shows, and I want to thank you guys for taking the time to be in here on such short notice. Lauren, if you're going to give your 2-minute elevator speech, if you're going to tell somebody what you do, if somebody asks what you do, give us just spend a couple of minutes telling them what you do for Recovery Epicenter and how you can make a difference.
Like what I do personally?
Yeah. What's your role in the Recovery Epicenter?
So my role is Narcan distribution, and also making that connections with the resources that are available.
So there is, and you are active in the recovery community, because I know that because we have mutual friends. We're friends now, of course, but only for a couple months, I guess, or a few months. And then, Will, if we're going to sign off, you see somebody somebody mentions they have a family member that needs help, what do you tell them?
Tell them to give us a call so that we can put you in contact with somebody else who has a solution.
Yeah, yeah. And so there are opportunities available out here, and there's a lot of services available. I have attorneys that specialize in addiction and mental illness. There is funding available sometimes for people that need to get into a recovery program or get into detox. And these folks have all been on the show, so you can go through the playlist, the recovery playlist, and kind of get to know them all first if you'd like. But that's our show tonight. We've been going about 51 minutes, 34 seconds. And I appreciate you guys, as always, being on here. And if no one's told you they love you today, God loves you, and so do I. Receive that, be blessed, and we'll speak soon. Now, the outro music. Thank you for supporting the Godlogic Project. And if no one's told you they love you today, God loves you. So I always sign off before the music's over. Be blessed. We'll speak soon.
This has been a Rev Kev production. Your mileage may vary.
Shut up, Kevin.